Hello, my name is Jeff Wilmington. I'm a technical product manager with the Networking and Security Business Unit at VMware. And today we're going to take a look at how customers can quickly get up and running with NSX-T and start their microsegmentation projects in just a few simple steps for their VLAN-backed virtual machine workloads. But before we start, it's important to understand what microsegmentation is and how NSX enables this security technique. So what is microsegmentation and what does it mean? Technically, microsegmentation is the instantiation of granular security services as close to the application as possible. This allows the ability to control communications both in and out of the application workload. And in most customer data centers, workloads are generally running as virtual machines, and those virtual machines have unrestricted communication between each other, even if they're supposed to communicate with each other or not. Without microsegmentation in the data center, no security controls whatsoever between the virtual workloads. This means that each of these different workloads, both the left or the right virtual machine, can open communications on any port and any protocol under any context and have unrestricted and possibly unnecessary communications east-west within the data center. So how does NSX help with microsegmentation? Well, the first thing it's going to do is provide a distributed firewall that's going to attach to the VNIC of every one of the virtual machines within the data center. And this gives the customer an enormous amount of context in which to define a fine-grained security policy of only the necessary port, protocol, Layer 7 app ID, and even user context of the communication that should be allowed between the two systems, fundamentally securing the communication between the two virtual machines. Now, virtual machines that exist in customer data centers can live on a single VLAN network or multiple VLANs. From NSX-T's perspective, these different possible combinations don't matter. NSX can provide security for these workloads without issues. NSX-T can be set up, configured, and ready to go with a customer's existing VLAN-backed workloads very quickly. No NSX-T routing or edge services or overlay networking is necessary to provide the security services for microsegmentation. With this brief overview in mind, let's take a look at how a customer can quickly get NSX-T up and running and ready to start providing microsegmentation capabilities for their data center workloads. The requirements for setting up NSX-T are actually pretty simple. For VLAN-backed microsegmentation with NSX-T, really the only requirements are a deployed NSX-T unified appliance, a virtual switch such as the NVDS or VDS 7.0 with support for vSphere 7.0, and lastly, our hypervisors prepared with NSX-T and the virtual workloads running on top of them. Once all the requirements are in place, the workflow the customer needs to follow to get started consists of 4 simple steps. They're going to prepare the clusters with NSX-T, create a VLAN-backed segment in NSX-T that matches the VLAN of the virtual machines. They're going to do a quick migration of the virtual machines to this NSX-T segment, and then they can start writing their security policies manually. Or the more preferred method is to use NSX Intelligence for automated recommendations and deep security insights into the traffic flows of a customer environment. So let's move over to the lab and show how quickly we can get NSX-T up and running and microsegmentation policies ready to be deployed. Now we brought up the customer environment here, and we can see that we have a couple of clusters. Cluster 70 is running the application with a web server and a database server attached to it. We have our virtual center that's up and running. Our NSX-T unified appliance has been deployed, and we also have the NSX Intelligence appliance deployed as well. If we move over to networking, we can see that a VDS 7.0 has been deployed and that we have virtual machines that are running on this management port group. This is the application that we just took a look at that is now riding on a DV port group on the VDS. Now, NSX-T unified appliance is already deployed. We have a VDS 7.0 that's already in place. We can now move over to the NSX-T console and start the installation process of NSX-T. Pulling up the NSX-T console, the first thing we need to do is actually go to prepare the clusters for NSX-T is to go over to System, go into Fabric, go to Compute Managers, and make sure that our vCenter server is registered with NSX so that we can now see the clusters and able to prepare them with NSX-T. Once we verified that registration status is registered and connection status is up, we could click on the Getting Started wizard. We see there's a new tile here called Prepare Clusters for VLAN Microsegmentation, and we click on the Get Started button. With the vCenter server registered with NSX, we now get a list of all the clusters that are associated with the vCenter server that we just registered. And we can see that cluster 70 shows up here, which is the cluster that we have our workloads running on. When we select this, we'll go ahead and click Next. We're now presented with a Physical and Network Adapters tab here, we see that the VDS that is selected is the VDS 7.0 that we had selected in the vCenter server. We're going to select a couple of uplinks here and select them and add them to the active uplinks. And what this will do is it will add NSX and allow the uplink profile that will be assigned to use the uplinks that are attached for the host. We're going to click Next. Since we're using vSphere 7.0 and ESXi 7.0, the last step is for VM kernel migration and is not necessary as part of this process. When we're all finished, we're going to click the Finish button. Once the settings take effect, we'll now be brought back over to the Getting Started Wizard tab, and we'll see that there's a new status bar at the bottom for preparing the clusters. In the background, NSX-T is creating a transport zone, creating an uplink profile, assigning those profiles and the transport zones to the ESXi servers that we selected in the cluster, and is preparing and installing the NSX bits in the ESXi host. We're going to wait until this is done and completed, and then we can go ahead and start moving our virtual machines. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and create our VLAN backed segment in NSX while this process is continuing. Creating an NSX-T logical segment is actually very simple. We'll click on Networking, we're going to click on Segments, and we're going to click Add Segment. Here, we're just going to go ahead and give it a name. In this case, we're just going to call it VLAN Logical Segment, and we're going to select a transport zone. The transport zone that we're going to select by default is this NSX VLAN transport zone. The admin state is going to be up, and we're going to assign a VLAN tag for the actual logical segment. In our case, our virtual machines live on VLAN 0. With this done, we'll save and allow the configuration to take effect. Once the logical segment is finished configuring, we'll get a prompt asking if we want to continue configuring this segment. There's no reason to, so we'll go ahead and click No here. Once the UI comes back up, we should see that we have a new VLAN segment. It is admin up and the state is success. We can now move over and take a look and see what our progress is on installing NSX-T bits to our ESXi hosts. To check our progress on the installation of NSX-T, we'll click back over to System, go back to Fabric, click on Nodes, and we're going to make sure that we're in the Managed By of the vCenter. And when we expand our cluster here, we can see that we have NSX configuration of success and the node status is set for up in all greens on our ESXi server. This goes to show that our NSX-T deployment to our ESXi server was clean and installed and up and running. With NSX deployed, we can now go back over to the vCenter and start moving our virtual server over to the NSX logical segment that we just created. When we flip back over to the vCenter server, we can see that the VDS 7.0 now has a new port group called VLAN_LS, which is the logical segment that we created in NSX. It has an N tag on it to associate that as an NSX port group on the VDS. The easiest way to move these virtual machines over to this new logical segment is actually pretty easy. Since both of these machines live on a management port group, we now can just right-click, migrate VMs to another network, browse, select the logical segment that we just created, hit OK, hit Next, select both of our virtual machines, Next, and Finish, and instantly we can see down here at the bottom that our virtual machines are now no longer on the management network of the DV port group. They are now attached to the NSX logical segment of VLAN_logical segment. Now that we've moved them, we can now start the process for microsegmentation. With the machines moved over to the NSX-T logical segment, we flip back over to the NSX-T console, and now we can go into inventory, click on virtual machines, and we now see the inventory objects of the virtual machines now associated in NSX. We can go through here and create things such as logical groups for going over to security, distributed firewall, and creating microsegmentation policies of the ports and protocols for the different systems. Now this is how you can go through and create an NSX-T security policy for east-west traffic by hand. But the better situation or a better solution to this is to click on Plan and Troubleshoot. We've got NSX Intelligence installed. All we need to do is click on Discover and Take Action. And we can see that when we go into NSX Intelligence, I can select the security groups, select the virtual machines, select the two virtual machines that I just moved over to an NSX-T logical segment, hit Apply, and now we're starting to see all of the application traffic that's actually occurring between these virtual machines. We can then use this information to create our microsegmentation policies for these virtual machines. NSX Intelligence will actually allow us to make recommendations off all of the different traffic patterns that we see here and automatically add those recommendations as firewall rules to create east-west microsegmentation policy automatically versus having to do it manually in the distributed firewall. Getting up and running with NSX-T for VLAN-backed microsegmentation is super simple. The requirements are minimal and the process is simple to follow and use. NSX-T makes the entire process easy for customers, and when coupled with NSX Intelligence, customers will be microsegmenting their applications automatically in no time. I hope this video was informative, and thanks for watching.